And to kick us off, I have the very great pleasure of welcoming to the stage His Excellency Sheikh Salman bin Khalifa Al-Khalifa, the Minister for Finance and National Economy for Bahrain. Your Excellency, please join me. Your Excellency, thank you so much for joining us. We're here to talk about how global macroeconomic trends affect fintech. And frankly, I don't know where to start because so much is changing about the global economy and has changed over the past few years that it's quite bewildering. Perhaps I could start by asking you, when you think about the global economy, when you think about Bahrain's place in it and the financial sector's place in it, what are the big trends that you're thinking about right now?
Thank you, Joshua, and it's a pleasure to be here today. I'd like to start by thanking the Economic Development Board and Economist Impact for organizing this conference. I'd like to thank all of the sponsors and all of the participants. It's wonderful to see the energy, wonderful to see the number of companies that have participated outside, and it's a nice showcase of a few of the things that have been happening in the Kingdom of Bahrain as a financial center, and especially as a financial center in the global fintech industry, and the focus that we've had on this industry in particular. Bahrain for a long time has been a financial center in the region, and today financial services account for a significant portion of GDP and is the largest sector in the Kingdom of Bahrain's GDP. And as we have looked to have a very well-diversified economy in the Kingdom of Bahrain, and today over 83% of the GDP in the Kingdom of Bahrain is represented by non-oil sectors. Financial services and increasingly fintech becomes an extremely important sector that we're focused on developing and focused on ensuring that we have the right fertile environment for fintech. And as we look at some of the global macro trends that impact this sector in particular, it's very important to look at what has been happening since COVID. And one of the things that large global financial institutions started taking into account post-COVID was a full review of their supply chains and also a full review of their human capital footprint around the world. And that means that people wanted to look at having more than one center, having more than one tech hub, having more than one payment processing center around the world. And large centralized functions, though they continue with large firms, physically started being spread out to ensure that they were closer to a market or closer to where they were being, and also to benefit from the fact that human capital as the driver for this industry, and at the end of the day this industry is extremely dependent on people and it's a people business, that they were also close to where they could attract talent and close to where they can nurture talent. And those trends we have seen in a big way in the Kingdom of Bahrain. And what do we need to do with regards to ensuring that we are well positioned in the Kingdom of Bahrain to serve this industry and to ensure that we see significant growth? We need three main ingredients. And those three main ingredients are strong digital infrastructure, and secondly, a robust regulatory framework, and thirdly, strong human capital that you can attract, that you can nurture, and you can grow. And in all three areas, when it comes to strong digital infrastructure, there have been significant investments from companies in the digital services space, in the telecom space, in terms of connectivity, in terms of data centers, in terms of all sorts of hardware needed and infrastructure needed for this space. terms of the robust regulatory framework, the length and reputation of the Central Bank of Bahrain as a leading financial regulator in the region, with a long and proud track record of ensuring that our regulations are cutting edge, forward-looking, relevant and robust, specifically with things like launching the Fintech module in the CBB rulebook, ensuring that there is regulation for crypto assets, there's regulation for all sorts of financial services. But in addition to that, when I talk about a robust regulatory framework, it's not just the central bank. It is important that you also have a strong and forward-looking and robust regulatory framework with regards to digital services. And in the Kingdom of Bahrain, we've pioneered international regulations around data sovereignty. The Kingdom of Bahrain is the only country in the world that offers data sovereignty, and the data sovereignty law in the Kingdom of Bahrain is really a groundbreaking piece of legislation. And also other types of legislation in the data services and digital services space. And finally, human capital. Human capital and human resources. We're very proud in the Kingdom of Bahrain that our most important resource is the human capital in the kingdom. A very talented workforce that is very digitally savvy, that's very forward-looking, that's very dedicated, that's very driven. And then ensuring that through mechanisms like support from the Labour Fund, Tamkeen, with also big efforts from the Economic Development Board, chaired by His Royal Highness the Crown Prince and Prime Minister, to reach out to global companies, showcase Bahrain, and ease their presence here. We've seen the creation of tech hubs as a result. And there's a very good example with the Citibank Tech Hub that was set up in Bahrain and then others, to ensure that global international firms are benefiting from these three ingredients, but also have access to the talent pool. And then we have to work with accelerators and with training institutes to ensure that human resource has the digital tools and the digital literacy to be able to grow and nurture themselves.
That's really interesting, and I found it so interesting that you said the Kingdom of Bahrain has decided to become the first country to give digital sovereignty. How do you, in taking decisions like that, how do you view the government's role in promoting this sector, and where the balance is between what the government should do and what should be done by private enterprise? Clearly, the step towards digital sovereignty will make a big difference.
The more the private sector and private enterprise can do, the better. And in many cases, especially when we look at digital services, we say, our job is to make sure the government doesn't get in the way, and that we do create a robust environment in terms of ensuring that there is compliance with the law, and that we are, but if somebody wants to do something that is legal and not hurting somebody else, then you shouldn't be encouraging them to innovate. You should be encouraging them to have a seamless way to conduct themselves. You mentioned, and focus on fintech as an example. We have today, we see that traditional banking services are having to evolve. The bank as an institution is evolving and changing very rapidly. It's no longer a bank on the high street that you go to once a week, twice a week, physically to get it. That model is of a bygone era today. What has not changed is that people still need banking services. So you still need a place to receive money, save money, and have an institution that transfers you money. And that institution needs to be robust, needs to be safe, needs to be stable. But the one thing is, you need to access it from your pocket 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that has become the standard. So even though the banking institutions need to evolve for evolving consumer behavior and expectations, the basic service is still the same. Here's where you can receive money, here's where you can save money, here's where you can transfer money, and that won't change.
Also, you talked a bit there about the balance between fintech, or what we're talking about as fintech today, and the kind of the broader financial sector, and kind of I think your point was that the line is quite blurred now between the services you get between the two. So when you look at not just fintech but Bahrain's financial sector more broadly, what are the growth areas that get you most excited?
Again, I will come back to the transformation that we're seeing as a result of digital services. And that has certainly had the biggest impact. And one of the areas that's also important when we talk about this is the interlink, and as you say, lines are being blurred, the interlink and very important role that telecoms companies play. Telecoms companies today play a very important role in the Kingdom of Bahrain when we look at some of the large fintech players that we have. Of course, there's Benefit, which is a real-time settlement system that is connected with a front-end app to a very, very high penetration rate in the Kingdom of Bahrain. So everybody benefits everybody instead of actually exchanging cash, and that was also, that adoption rate was accelerated as a result of COVID. But then we look at what the telecoms companies are doing. We have Beyond Money, which is Betelco's offering in the space, STC Pay, and others. And then we have, of course, companies that come together to create an ecosystem for their consumers and tie them in, and startups in the space as well. And we're seeing how important it has been and how transformational they have been to the space. In addition to that, areas that we're focused on in the Kingdom of Bahrain, besides traditional banking services of borrowing, lending, and traditional banking services, has been a focus on offering investment services. How can Bahrain serve as a hub for family offices and multi-family offices? And very importantly as well, the insurance industry. So these are all industries that today are benefiting from high adoption rates of technology, that are transforming their ability to do business in a seamless fashion. It's great to be living in this time where we're seeing such change and ensuring that we continue to position Bahrain in the right place across all of these industries.
One of in looking at this pace of change, one of the things that governments all over the world are grappling with is the impetus to be adaptable, to drive a dynamic sector, but also to maintain financial stability and try to make sure that this kind of dynamism and growth doesn't endanger it. How do you think about that balance and what you need to do to maintain it?
It's an extremely important question. Thank you for that. And the way that we've approached it in the Kingdom of Bahrain is that high adoption of digital services and larger digitalization within the financial sector actually gives the regulator better information of what's happening. And with better information, with more transparency and visibility that you can deliver through the digital solutions and highly digitized firm, you have to utilize those tools to ensure that the regulator can strengthen its oversight, see a real picture in real time, and then also be able to ensure stability in the financial system. Trying to figure out what a bank is doing when all the ledgers are handwritten and in a room somewhere, which is what regulators had to do decades ago, versus today seeing what a real-time picture is, means that you can actually push for higher compliance. You can push for more stability in the sector with the right tools. So yes, the speed at which things are moving The volatility of entrants coming in and out is something, but you can also maintain a very strong, robust financial services sector and utilize the digitization to strengthen oversight and strengthen compliance.
Thank you. Now, we've talked about some huge macroeconomic trends, the rejigging of supply chains after COVID, the impetus to make them much more resilient and distributed, and the opportunities that creates. Of course, so much else about the global economy is changing as well. Interest rates have risen very sharply after decades of falling. Inflation is back. Patterns of trade are changing. How do you think about how these factors are influencing your economy and also the financial sector?
Absolutely, and thank you for that. And today, when we look at where we are in the Kingdom of Bahrain, in 2021, we launched the Economic Growth Plan of Kingdom of Bahrain, and we focused on areas of growth. And having said and seen the impact of COVID, post-COVID, and how the steps that the Kingdom of Bahrain took to protect the community, to protect people, and ensure that we also had the least disruption in terms of people's activity and people's economy. Coming out of that period, looking forward, it was, what are we going to do now? Given the wider macroeconomic picture, and there was a focus on ensuring that we had the right projects in place, and that we drove those projects, that we worked together with the private sector to ease their ability to access infrastructure, execute what they needed to execute, make sure that we simplified regulation. This is something that we're very, very focused on. We want to make sure, the question that we ask ourselves in government today, the continual question is, what is the slowest part of the machine? What's taking the longest to get done? And then what do we need to do to shorten that time? Because to ensure that people are deploying capital, investing, participating in economic growth, we need to make it easy for them. And we need to make it easy for people to receive their permit. We need to make it easy for people to start building something. We need to make it easy for people to set up a business. And whenever we look at a process and we re-engineer that process to simplify it and shorten it, in an economy like the Kingdom of Bahrain, where we have very good data and are able to see, we see the impact immediately, and we see that immediately people will start investing and focusing on it. For a while, we were in a rising interest rate environment. The global inflation picture was high. We're now seeing that the inflation picture has abated. In the Kingdom of Bahrain, we did a lot of work to ensure that we managed to keep inflation at lower rates than it was globally. Focused on ensuring that as an importing economy, we were widening our import supply chains in a period where global supply chains were disrupted, and we saw the results. If you compare the inflation picture, inflation cycle we went through in the Kingdom of Bahrain versus a global trend, it was much more muted. But today we are now in a period of more muted global inflation, and what we're seeing really as the beginning of a downtrend in interest rates. And that in and of itself will open up the opportunity for more investment and open up the opportunity for larger capital deployment by the private sector.
Absolutely. We're sadly coming to the end of our time. So could I finish by asking you to paint a picture of the future? If you think about where you want the Kingdom of Bahrain's financial and fintech sector to be, its position in the global economy in the next 5-10 years, where do you see that position?
We are very lucky in the Kingdom of Bahrain to have a very strong, talented workforce. We have with a big focus on delivering excellence, and that's one of the traits in the Kingdom of Bahrain, and we're very proud of that. And for years, if I was to look back over the decades, whether it was with the pearling industry, where Bahrain was the global center for natural pearls, and we've had big initiatives around ensuring that we're doing more and highlighting and encouraging the pearling industry. And then with the oil industry, where Bahrain was one of the leaders in the region, with oil discovered here in 1932. And then the financial services sector, really from the big uptick from the 60s and 70s onwards. Bahrain has always been at the leading edge of industries across the region, and today in a more integrated world across the world. So when we look forward, that adaptability that we've seen as an inherent trait in the Kingdom of Bahrain, and the focus on delivering excellence, that is something that we're very proud of, through human capital that focuses on it, and a very, very talented workforce. Today we consider, as the EDB goes out and speaks to investors across the world, I can tell you that when people make a decision to invest in Bahrain, and large firms make a decision to set up an operation in Bahrain, when we ask them, why did you make your decision? It comes down to the fact that they've seen one of the most talented workforces in the world, and we're very proud of that. And as we look forward, that focus on innovation and focus on delivering excellence is something that will position us well within global fintech around the world for global companies. And the ones that have come here and set up shop have one thing in common. All of them have increased the size of their presence after they've operated in Bahrain for a while. So that's a wonderful thing to see. And we'd like to see that continue.
Your Excellency, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. We're going to rejig the stage a little bit, and then I'll welcome our next panel on to talk about generative AI from concept to proof.